The standoff in the blood-slicked corridor. The hallway smelled like burned plastic and blood. Dim red lights blinked on and off from the ceiling, casting long shadows over the wreckage. Smoke curled in the air like fingers, reaching out from broken pipes. Dr. Silas Reed stepped carefully over the shattered remains of the med drone, its metal arms twisted and sparking. This place used to be a research station. Clean floors, quiet rooms. Now it looked more like a battlefield. His hand tightened around the small medkit strapped to his side. It felt useless here. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for war. He was a medic, sent to patch up wounds, stop bleeding, save lives, human lives. But in the last week, the line between friend and enemy had become harder to see. He turned a corner, stopped. There it was, a Thorvax. It lay crumpled against the wall, its giant body slumped over, breathing slow and ragged. Black blood pooled beneath it, thick and glossy. Pieces of sharp metal stuck out from its chest, maybe shrapnel, maybe something worse. Its dark eyes were half closed, barely moving. Reed's mouth went dry. The Thorvax were not allies. Not anymore. The first contact missions had gone well. Smiles, shared food, even stories. But something changed. On Mars Delta, they had attacked without warning. They had slaughtered the entire Alpha Squad. He remembered the screams through the comms. He remembered his brother's voice. And then, silence. Now this thing, this beast, was here. Dying. He didn't move closer. He just watched it breathe. Watched the rise and fall of its huge chest. Part of him wanted to walk away. Part of him said, let it bleed out. After all, it wasn't like they would help him if the roles were reversed. His fingers hovered near the scanner, unsure. Just scan it, he whispered to himself. Then leave. He took a step forward. His boots made a soft crunching sound over shattered glass. The Thorvax didn't react. Maybe it didn't even know he was there. He lifted the scanner and aimed it at the creature's chest. Numbers popped up on the screen. Bad numbers. Failing vitals. Internal bleeding. One lung had collapsed. Its heart was struggling. You've got minutes, he said quietly, not that it could understand. He should have felt pity. He didn't. He turned away, took a step back. Then something strange happened. The creature groaned. Not loud, just a low sound, like pain forced through sharp teeth. He paused, turned his head slightly, just enough to see it. The Thorvax was lifting its head. Its black eyes blinked at him. And then, its mouth opened. No translator, no tech. But somehow, it spoke. Not in the deep, guttural language of its kind. In English. In a voice so familiar, so human, that Reed felt a chill crawl down his spine. Reed. His name. His own name. Not just a word, but the way it was spoken. The voice. It sounded like his brother. His brother, who died 6 weeks ago on Mars Delta. The brother whose last words had been cut off mid-transmission, whose body was never found. Reed's heart pounded in his chest. The scanner slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a soft clatter. He stared at the Thorvax, now struggling to keep its eyes open. Say that again, he said, voice low. No answer. The creature's head dropped forward, heavy and weak. He stepped closer, slowly this time, like approaching a ghost. Every instinct told him this was wrong. Impossible. But the voice had been real. He knelt beside the dying alien, trying not to gag from the smell of blood and burned skin. He reached out and touched its neck, checking for a hidden translator or implant. There was nothing. Just rough, scaled skin and the slow, fading pulse beneath. How do you know my name? He whispered. No answer. Why do you sound like him? Still nothing. The Thorvax groaned again, softer this time. Its lips moved, but no sound came out. Reed leaned closer, and for a second, he thought it might speak again. Instead, it shivered, then fell still. Reed sat back, confused and shaking. This wasn't normal. This wasn't medical. This was something else. Something deeper. Something wrong. His hand shook as he picked up the scanner. The Thorvax was still alive, but barely. He could save it. He had the tools, but saving it would mean keeping it alive for questioning. It would mean finding out how it knew his name, and why it had spoken with his brother's voice. Was it a trick? A trap? Or something worse? He looked at the creature one last time. And then, with a quiet sigh, he opened his medkit. Not to walk away, but to keep it breathing, just long enough to get answers. Voices in the dark. The emergency lights had dimmed to a low red pulse, just enough to see by, but still harsh on the eyes. Silence had taken over the corridor, except for the distant groan of metal and the soft, wheezing breath of the Thorvax Alpha lying at Dr. Reed's feet. He worked fast, but his hands were steady now, each movement mechanical, focused. The blood was thick and dark, unlike anything human, and it clung to his gloves like oil. Every now and then, the alien twitched, its body reacting to the pain, but its eyes didn't open again. Reed had done the basics, sealed the wounds, stabilized the internal bleeding, injected a cocktail of neutral stabilizers designed for unknown physiology. It was alive. For now. He didn't know why he was doing it. No, he knew exactly why. It had spoken his name. Not just that, but in the voice of his brother, Jonas. It wasn't a vague resemblance. It was exact. Same tone. Same pause after the first syllable. Same edge of a half-laugh, like he was about to tell a joke. Jonas had always spoken like he was sharing a secret. Hearing that voice again, coming from a Thorvax of all things, had hit Reed like a punch to the chest. Now, with the creature stable and unconscious, he sat back against the cold metal wall. His breath was shallow. He stared at the alien's face, its strange jawline and scarred forehead, and tried to imagine how it could possibly know anything about Jonas. He had never heard of a Thorvax using human voices. They didn't have the anatomy for it, and even when they used translators, the speech always came out stiff and distorted. But this had been raw, natural, and real. Jonas, Reed whispered to himself, what the hell is going on? He reached into his satchel and pulled out a small recorder. He flicked it on and held it close to his mouth. Log entry, Emergency Bay 6, Thorvax Alpha, male, injured, stable, incident, unexplained. Patient spoke, in English, in the voice of Jonas Reed. Further investigation required. He clicked the recorder off and looked around the corridor. There was still no sign of command, no rescue teams, no other survivors. The station's main systems were down. He was alone, or mostly alone. He checked the vitals again. Heart rate was slow but steady. Brain activity was low, almost coma level, but there was a flicker. Something strange. Not typical neurological patterns. More like. He paused, leaned closer to the scanner. That's not right, he muttered. The brain waves were irregular, but not random. There was rhythm, almost like code. Repeating pulses that shifted slowly. Not a language he recognized, but it didn't look like noise either. It looked intentional, controlled. Then, a sound. Soft, behind him. He spun around, hand reaching for the emergency laser strapped to his medkit. Nothing. Just the corridor stretching into red-lit darkness. Then the Thorvax moved. Not a full motion, just a twitch. But its eyes snapped open. Reed froze. The creature looked at him, not in the blank, animal way he'd seen before from Thorvax soldiers, but with focus. Recognition. Its mouth opened slightly. But this time, no words came out. Only a long breath, shaky and tired. Can you understand me? Reed asked, trying to keep his voice calm. A slow nod. How do you know my name? Silence. Reed stepped closer, heart pounding. How do you know that voice? The Thorvax blinked once, then twice, and then it lifted one clawed hand and pointed, not at Reed, but at the wall behind him. Reed turned and saw only scorched metal. But then, on instinct, he walked toward it. He placed his hand on the wall, then froze. A soft hum. Vibration. A signal, maybe. Something buried in the wall systems. Without thinking, he opened his tablet and scanned the surface. It wasn't just damage. Someone had hidden a data node here. Old Imperial tech, not Thorvax made. The encryption was human. "What is this?" he asked, turning to the Thorvax. This time, the voice came again. Weaker. Cracked. "Not me," it said. "Him." "Who?" "The one you lost." Reed's stomach twisted. He looked at the data node again, then back to the Thorvax. "Jonas, is he alive?" The Thorvax blinked. He was. "What does that mean?" "He passed through. Part of him remains." The lights flickered again. Reed swallowed hard. This wasn't medicine anymore. This was something else. Something he was never trained for. And deep down, he knew, if he opened that data node, he might find answers. Or he might find something worse. Either way, the truth was waiting in the dark. The memory buried in metal. The tablet screen glowed soft blue against the darkness, casting a faint halo over Reed's hands as he worked to unlock the hidden data node. The encryption was old, military-grade, pre-collapse architecture. No reason a Thorvax would have access to something like this, especially not hidden behind a scorched bulkhead in a forgotten corridor. The signal embedded in the wall wasn't strong, but it pulsed with steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Every few seconds it skipped, then resumed, as if waiting for someone to notice. Reed's fingers moved carefully over the tablet. The code reminded him of his brother's work. Jonas had specialized in systems architecture during the early expansion years. He used to joke that machines trusted him more than people did. Reed didn't laugh at that joke anymore. His eyes narrowed as the tablet screen changed. Access granted. Then a pause. A small flickering window opened. No video, just audio. One single file. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the play button. He turned his head slowly, back toward the Thorvax. It hadn't moved. Still half-conscious. Still bleeding beneath the bandages. But its eyes, those dark, bottomless eyes, watched him. Not like a beast. Not like a patient. Like someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. He tapped play. At first, nothing. Just static. Then, a voice. Broken. Distant. Filled with pain and urgency. "This is Jonas Reed, Colony ID 73 Delta. If you're hearing this, I don't know if I'm alive. I don't know what I am anymore." Silas Reed's whole body tensed. He dropped to his knees in front of the tablet, heart racing, breath caught in his throat. The Thorvax aren't what we thought. They're not just soldiers, not just organisms. They have something in them, something like memory, but shared. A kind of ecosystem. When they absorb a mind, it doesn't die. It stays. In pieces, fragments, not just thoughts. Feelings. Voices. Reed stared at the Thorvax lying in front of him, motionless. He thought of its voice when it had said his name. He remembered the exact rhythm, the familiar hesitation, and now he knew why. "I was dying. They captured me. Something went wrong. Some machine, some interface I didn't understand. And then, I was in one of them. Not fully. Not really. Like, watching myself from far away. Screaming, but no one could hear." The voice crackled. Static cut through, then cleared again. "If you found this node, you're close to one of them. The one they kept me in. Or maybe the one who remembers me best. You have to understand. I'm not human anymore. Not fully. But I remember you, Silas. I remember you." Reed's throat tightened. He blinked fast, trying to push the sting from his eyes. He hadn't cried since the first report came in from Mars Delta. He thought he'd run out of tears by now. The audio continued, softer. Don't trust what it looks like. Don't trust the voice, even if it sounds like mine. If it speaks again, it's not because it wants to hurt you. It's because some part of me needs you to hear. Silence followed. The recording ended. Reed sat still for a long time. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just let the words settle over him, heavy like dust after an explosion. He turned slowly toward the Thorvax. "Jonas," he said, barely louder than a whisper. The creature blinked. No answer. But something in its gaze changed. Softer now. Less alien. As if it recognized something inside him, too. "You said part of him remains," Reed continued, voice shaking. "What does that mean? Where is the rest?" The Thorvax opened its mouth. The voice came slower this time, as if dragging the words from a deep well. "Fragments. Pieces. Hidden. Stolen. Stolen by who? Those who created us." Reed frowned. "You mean your kind?" "No, older than us. The first architects. Not Thorvax. Not human." Reed stood up slowly. This was going deeper than any report he'd ever read. None of this had ever been in the mission files. No one had mentioned memory transfer, or shared consciousness, or some hidden species behind the war. He felt a chill creep through his body. "You're saying someone else made you this way?" A nod. "And you're carrying my brother's memories, or his spirit, his voice, his pain, echoes of him." Reed ran a hand through his hair. "Why would you keep that? Why not erase it?" The Thorvax closed its eyes. Its next words came in a whisper that was almost kind. "We don't choose what stays." Reed stared down at the creature, the enemy, the thing that had killed hundreds, maybe thousands. And yet, it had carried his brother's voice through death, across galaxies. And maybe, just maybe, that voice had been trying to find its way back to him. The thought made him tremble. Outside the corridor, a faint vibration hummed through the floor. The sound of engines. Movement. Maybe rescue. Maybe something worse. Reed picked up his medkit, then looked at the Thorvax one more time. "I'm not leaving you behind," he said. "Not until I know the truth." The creature didn't speak. But in its eyes, Reed saw something unexpected. Gratitude. Or maybe forgiveness. Either way, they were no longer just medic and alien. They were two carriers of the same lost voice. And the road ahead had just become far stranger than he ever imagined. The whisper in the wound. The floor vibrated again. Stronger this time. Not the faint hum of distant engines, but a growing tremor beneath Reed's boots, steady and rhythmic like the footsteps of something massive approaching. He glanced down at the Thorvax, still lying weak but awake, eyes half-lidded and unfocused. Its body had stopped bleeding, at least for now, but it wasn't getting stronger. Whatever had been done to it, whatever echo of Jonas it carried, was fading, or maybe unraveling. Reed pocketed the data tablet and slung his medkit over his shoulder. He had one choice, and it wasn't retreat. He stepped back into the corridor, past the flickering lights, following the vibrations. They were coming from below, deep, like something old had woken up. He didn't know this part of the station. Outpost E9 had changed since the attack. Walls had shifted, stairwells collapsed. But his boots found their way to a maintenance lift embedded behind a rusted panel, still barely operational. He pressed his palm against the console, bypassed the security lock, and descended. The elevator moved slow and silent, cutting through levels of darkness. At some point, even the emergency lighting disappeared. Only his tablet screen remained, dim and blue, a weak circle of comfort in a tower of shadows. When the doors finally opened, it was like stepping into a tomb. This level wasn't on any map. Cold air poured out, sharp and metallic. The walls weren't human design. Neither Thorvax. Smooth silver black, almost organic in shape, curved like bone. No lights, no consoles. just a faint glow coming from ahead, pulsing slow like a heartbeat. He walked toward it. His footsteps echoed with every step. In the center of the room, something stood. Tall, impossible. A spire of black crystal shot through with veins of dull white light. It pulsed once, twice, and with each beat, a sound whispered in Reed's ears, not outside, but deep inside his mind. A voice. Not Jonas, not human. You've touched the echo. He stumbled backward. His eyes flicked around the room, but there was no speaker, no comms, no creature. Just the spire. You opened the memory. The key, the code. Reed grabbed his recorder, but it was already glitching. The signal warped. Even his tablet's screen had begun to stutter, shapes bending, lines trembling like leaves in wind. "Who are you?" he asked out loud, though he didn't expect an answer. "We are the architects." His throat went dry. "You created the Thorvax. We shaped them, like clay, like you. But clay cracks, and voices leak through. What do you want from me?" "We want silence." Reed's jaw clenched. He stepped closer to the spire, ignoring the cold wave of nausea that rolled through him. In the soft light, he could see things trapped beneath the crystal surface. Faint outlines of faces, eyes open, mouths frozen mid-scream. Not quite alive. Not quite dead. Suspended in memory. "Is my brother in there?" The spire pulsed harder. Part of him. The voice. The pain. The guilt. He was a soldier. He didn't do anything wrong. They all carry guilt, even if they do not know it. Guilt is the thread. It binds the voices to us. The room felt tighter now. The air thinner. You opened the signal. Now we hear you. Now we find you. Reed's heart slammed against his chest. He looked around, then turned and ran. Back to the elevator. Back through the black hallway, the broken lift, the flickering red lights. When he burst back into the corridor where the Thorvax lay, he was gasping for breath. It was awake now, fully, and sitting up. Its eyes met his. "You saw them," it said, voice rasping. He nodded, too shaken to speak. "They know," the creature said. "They will come." "What do they want?" The Thorvax lowered its head. "Not war. Not peace. They want quiet. They want the echoes to stop." Reed shook his head, voice cracking. "My brother is still in there. Maybe only pieces, but he's there. And if they want to erase him, I'm not letting that happen." The Thorvax blinked slowly. "Then you must choose." "Choose what?" "To carry his voice, or bury it." Reed didn't answer. He looked down at his hands, covered in dirt, blood, old memories, and new fears. He had come to this station to help, to heal. But now he was something else entirely. A bridge between species, a witness to something ancient and buried. And somewhere out there, the architects were listening, moving, coming. He turned back to the Thorvax, his voice steadier now. "Then we don't run. We don't hide. We find the other fragments, every last one. And we bring him back." The Thorvax tilted its head. "You will not be the same." "I'm already not the same," Reed whispered. Somewhere deep inside the station, the crystal spire pulsed again. Once, twice, then silence, fragments of the forgotten. The silence that followed felt heavier than any sound. Not the quiet of peace, but the kind that presses into your ears and makes your thoughts feel loud. Reed sat beside the Thorvax, the wall at his back, the world above still burning from battles no one truly understood. He had been a medic, trained to stop bleeding and stabilize heartbeats. Now he was standing at the edge of something much larger, something that didn't care about medicine or war. It cared about voices, memory, echoes. The Thorvax no longer seemed like a dying beast. It sat upright, its breathing steadier, its presence calm. Not threatening. It was still alien, its body covered in layered scales and sharp bone ridges, but its movements had become slower, purposeful. It didn't speak unless Reed asked a question. It seemed to be waiting for something, maybe for him to decide what came next. Reed stared at the dark corridor ahead. Part of him wanted to climb back to the surface, call for extraction. Let others handle this. Let someone smarter, someone stronger, carry the burden of these impossible truths. But the voice still echoed in his head. Jonas's voice. Soft, frayed at the edges, still trying to speak from behind some invisible wall. You said there were more fragments, Reed said, finally breaking the silence. How many? The Thorvax didn't answer at first. Then, slowly, it turned its head. 7. At the beginning. Now, 3 remain. 3. The others were silenced, harvested, broken. By who? The architects. A nod. They fear the voices that don't die. Reed tried to imagine it. The mind of his brother, split apart, scattered across alien minds like ashes on the wind. And not just Jonas. Others too. Memories trapped like insects in amber, screaming inside borrowed bodies. Can they be brought back? He asked, almost afraid of the answer. The Thorvax hesitated, not fully, not as they were. But you can bring the pieces to peace. Reed stood. Then where's the next one? The alien's eyes shifted, unfocused, like they were staring beyond the walls. Below, beneath the lower vault, kept in a cage of light. Then we go there. Not without cost. I know. They moved together through the lower levels of Outpost E9. Corridors became tighter, lights fewer. Strange markings began to appear on the walls. Circular patterns carved into the steel, spirals within spirals, like symbols from a dream. Reed touched one briefly as he passed, and something cold slid through his thoughts. Not pain exactly, more like an old sadness, like homesickness for a place he'd never been. He pulled his hand back quickly and kept walking. After 10 minutes, they reached a sealed door. Its surface pulsed faintly with energy. Old human tech, but twisted, rewired with foreign logic. The console decided blinked erratically. Reed crouched beside it, fingers moving over the interface. Strange code scrolled across the screen, part English, part something older. The system was corrupted, but not broken. It was protecting something, hiding something. This vault, the Thorvax said behind him, holds what remains of Echo 3. Jonas. No, another. Her name was Leah. She burned during the first breach. Another human. A nod. Your kind were the first to carry fragments. The first to break the cycle. The door hissed and slid open. The room beyond was round, with curved walls covered in smooth panels. In the center floated a containment field, flickering blue like a curtain of glass caught in a storm. Inside, something moved. Reed stepped forward slowly. He could see her now. Her body slumped against the far wall, suspended by invisible force, human but wrong. Her skin glowed faintly, veins filled with something that pulsed like biolight. Her eyes were open but not seeing. Her mouth moved, whispering silently. Leah, Reed called. No response. He turned to the Thorvax. What do I do? Listen. Reed stepped into the field. The energy tickled across his skin, a strange warmth spreading through his chest. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder. Not outside. Inside. A woman's voice. They made us into songs, and then erased the notes. Her eyes snapped toward him. Who are you? I'm Silas. I'm here because of Jonas, my brother. Jonas was kind. He gave me memory when I was nothing. Reed's throat tightened. He's still here, part of him. In others, I'm trying to bring him back. Her expression shifted, her mouth curved into the hint of a smile. Then you're the echo now. The light flared. The field trembled. And then it collapsed. Leah fell forward into his arms, but she didn't weigh much. Her body was too thin, too cold. She looked up at him, and for a moment, just a second, her eyes were completely clear. "Find the last two," she said, "before they bury us all." Then her body went still. The Thorvax stepped forward, lowered its head in silence. Reed gently laid her down. His hands trembled, but he didn't cry. Not now. Not yet. There were still 2 fragments left, 2 more voices lost in the dark. And he was the only one listening, the voice beneath the skin. Reed didn't speak for a long time after Leah's body went still. The air inside the chamber hung heavy like smoke after a fire, warm and choking. Silence wrapped itself around the room, not the comforting kind, but the kind that settles over things that are broken. Leah had only said a few words, but they echoed through his mind louder than gunfire. "Then you're the echo now." He looked down at his hands. They didn't look different. They still trembled the same way, still bore the dried blood from patching wounds and digging through wreckage. But something inside them had shifted. Not pain, not fear, something more like weight, like a thread had been sewn through his bones without him noticing. He was carrying voices now, like a radio tuned to lost stations, catching whispers not meant for the living. The Thorvax crouched near Leah's body, placing 2 clawed fingers over her forehead in silence. No words, no chant, just stillness, reverence. And Reed understood, somehow, that this was how they mourned, not with noise, but with memory. "What happens to her now?" Reed asked softly. "Her memory will fade," the Thorvax said, "unless it is carried by me." The Thorvax looked at him. By anyone willing to remember her, the architects erase what is forgotten. They only fear what endures. Reed closed his eyes and took a breath. The air tasted of old metal and ozone. He knew now what he had to do, even if the idea scared him more than anything else since this began. He had to find the remaining fragments, gather what remained of Jonas and the others, and bring their voices into one place. Hold them like shattered glass in his bare hands. Painful, yes, but better than letting them vanish into the dark. The Thorvax led him through a series of deeper tunnels, ones that bent strangely, as if they weren't built but grown. The walls no longer looked metallic. They pulsed, faintly alive, covered in fibrous veins that seemed to breathe. It felt like walking through the ribcage of some ancient beast, something long dead, but not entirely still. These tunnels weren't human-made, Reed said. They were grown by the architects, the Thorvax replied. This was their garden. Now, it's only roots and rot. The metaphor made Reed's skin crawl. The garden had died, but its roots still reached for anything warm. They reached the next chamber, a long, narrow vault, lined with what looked like cryopods, though none of them were active. Some were broken, others sealed shut. And in the very center, hovering within a ring of spinning light, floated a figure. Male. Eyes closed, arms limp at his sides. But his face. Jonas, Reed breathed. The resemblance was perfect. Not just the features, but the posture, the subtle tilt of the head. He stepped forward slowly, afraid the figure might vanish like a mirage. Is it really him? He asked. A fragment, the Thorvax said, but stronger than the others, closer to what he was. The pod around Jonas pulsed with strange energy, light that wasn't light, bending at wrong angles, like reflections in shattered mirrors. Reed reached for it, but the Thorvax grabbed his wrist. This one remembers, it warned. More than the others. Not just pain, but purpose. Reed pulled his hand away slowly. What do you mean? He is not only a memory, he is an anchor. And anchors, Reed knew, didn't drift. They held everything down, even the things that wanted to float away. If we wake him, the Thorvax said, we must be ready to carry what he remembers. Reed looked up at the floating form. His brother's face was calm, peaceful, but something behind those closed eyelids felt heavy, dangerous, even. He reached out again, and this time the light let him through. The chamber darkened. The spinning ring collapsed inward, and Jonas opened his eyes. Not slow, not confused. His eyes snapped open like floodgates breaking. And then, without warning, Reed collapsed to his knees. His head burned, images pouring in like water through a broken dam. Planets, corridors, dying soldiers, the scream of machines, and above it all, a voice. His brothers, shouting orders, begging for silence, cursing the architects for what they had done. He saw the day Jonas died, but not from the outside. From within, Jonas had volunteered for the interface program, had offered his mind for experimentation, believing it could save the war. The architects hadn't killed him, not directly. They had copied him, shredded his thoughts into data, and fed them into the minds of the Thorvax like code into machines. Jonas hadn't died once. He had died over and over. Each time one of them fell. Each time a memory collapsed. Reed screamed. Then it stopped. He was lying on the floor, the Thorvax crouched beside him, hand on his chest. "You saw," it said quietly. He remembered everything. Reed whispered. "And now so do you." Reed stared up at the ceiling, blinking tears from his eyes. "What do I do now?" The Thorvax stood. "There is one more echo left." "Where?" The alien looked toward the far end of the chamber, where a narrow tunnel pulsed with faint red light. Inside the architect core. Reed stood, his legs weak, his heart heavier than ever. "Then that's where we go." The final voice was waiting. And the truth behind the war, the real truth, was about to speak. The tunnel narrowed as they descended, the light turning from red to a sickly pale white, like the glow of something that had never seen the sun. Reed's boots dragged slightly now, his legs weighed down not by injury, but by memory. Each step felt like walking through someone else's life, images flashing in his mind that didn't belong to him. Jonas's voice still lingered at the edge of his thoughts, quieter now, but not gone. It was like carrying a song you didn't remember learning, but could hum in your sleep. The Thorvax walked ahead of him, silent, but not cold. There was a mutual understanding now between them, an unspoken truce built not on peace, but on shared burden. They had both carried voices that were not theirs. They had both felt the echo ripple through their minds and reshape who they thought they were. And now, they were both headed toward the final fragment, the last piece of Jonas, the last answer. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber, circular, cavernous, and pulsing with faint energy. The floor was glass-like, but soft underfoot, almost breathing. In the center, floating above a column of woven light, was something strange. Not a person. Not entirely. It was a shape, humanoid in outline, but made of layered memory. Flickers of faces, pieces of limbs, flashes of voice and color that never held for long. It was like watching a dream try to take form, but always slipping apart before it could finish. "Is that the last echo?" Reed asked, voice barely above a whisper. The Thorvax nodded. "It is not just Jonas. It is the others who died in the split, the memories that didn't find a body. They fused here." Reed stepped closer. His breath fogged the air. The presence of the thing, it didn't feel threatening. It felt mournful, like something left behind too long. The shape twitched. Then it spoke. Not in one voice. In hundreds. "We remember." Reed froze. "We were pain. We were orders. We were screams in static. We were left to die in code." He stepped forward. "I'm here for Jonas." The shape turned slowly toward him, the shifting layers focusing into a single face for a moment. Jonas's face, pale and tired, eyes filled with sorrow too deep for words. "You shouldn't have come," the voice said. "I had to," Reed replied. "You called me. Your voice, your memory, it reached me. That wasn't me. Not only, that was what was left. Broken things calling out, hoping to be real again. Reed's throat tightened. You're still here. You're still my brother, even if it's just pieces. The voice went quiet, then softer. Do you remember when we were kids, and I broke Mum's comms chip? Reed blinked. The memory hit him like wind. He'd forgotten that. Jonas sneaking into their mother's bag, trying to send a fake report so they could get out of chores. The comms chip short-circuited, and they'd blamed it on a solar flare. You lied so well, Reed said, smiling weakly. I cried so you'd get less trouble, the voice answered. That was Jonas. Really Jonas. Still there, buried beneath layers of war and code and grief. You're still in there. We can bring you back, Reed said, stepping closer. All of you. Not just for me, for the others. The ones who were lost. The ones who became part of this. You can't bring back what never left. The room darkened. The column of light pulsed once, twice, then steadied. The echo shape floated lower, until it hovered only inches from Reed. He reached out. If you pull us out, Jonas said, you carry us. Forever. No rest. No silence. Every thought that was torn apart will whisper through your skin. You won't be you anymore. Not fully. I know. Why would you do that? Reed looked up at the fractured face of his brother, then at the thorax, and finally at the strange chamber carved by beings older than both their species. Because someone has to remember. The voice paused. Then whispered, then hold out your hand. He did. The light engulfed him. Heat rushed through his chest, flooding his lungs, his heart, his mind. He saw Jonas's final moment. His body dissolving into light inside the architect chamber, his thoughts unraveling, scattered across the thorax neural net. He saw others, names, faces, entire lives, all lost to war and science no one fully understood. He felt their grief, their confusion, and their hope. The light faded. Reed stood alone. The echo shape was gone, but something had changed in him. He could feel the weight of them all, not like voices in his head, more like memories in his blood. Quiet, waiting, watching. The thorax stepped forward. You chose the burden, it said. I chose to remember, Reed answered. Together, they turned toward the tunnel. As they climbed back through the levels of the ruined station, Reed could feel each heartbeat like a drum in his chest. Not just his. Theirs. Jonas. Leah. The others. Fragments, yes, but no longer forgotten. Above them, the war still burned. But something had changed. The echoes had found a home. And the architects, wherever they listened from, would know. Silence was no longer safe. Not while memory lived.